Let's talk about deliveries, and to be specific, let's talk about Nio, Tesla, but also the entire market, but with a focus on what's happening in China. But before I start, please make sure to smash the like button because this really helps that more people see this video. And if you haven't so, please subscribe to the channel and hit the bell button that whenever I post a new video, you actually get a notification on your phone or your laptop. So if you follow me on Twitter, you probably saw how I've reacted to both the Tesla and the Nio delivery numbers for Q3 and for September. And basically with Tesla, my personal expectations have not been exceeded, but still the result is really good. And obviously in the whole context of the overall vehicle markets in the world. So that is really an achievement. And it's also been exceeding the Wall Street estimates. So all in all, what matters is that the 139,000 in the end are a new record for Tesla. And it's really showing that Tesla is living up to the expectations of its investors, despite the fact that maybe some of the bulls like me have actually even anticipated more, and maybe this also resulted in a couple of people selling off the shares now. So Tesla has obviously lost out in Friday's trading. However, that doesn't matter to me too much. I personally haven't sold a single share. And actually what I'm going to show in this video is that I actually took a closer look at the numbers, and specifically for China, and this is where I found a couple of positives that I think haven't been recognized by the markets yet. Then we also got the Nio deliveries, so 4,708 vehicles in September, increasing by 133% year over year. So these delivery numbers were actually beyond my expectations, to be honest, because in my last videos I already told you that I am, more cautious about the numbers because I still thought that Nio is quite supply constrained. However, if I go back to my Q3 earnings videos, back then I actually already made the estimations that Nio could actually deliver 12,000 vehicles this quarter. So they even exceeded on that again, but even more, they have definitely exceeded on the guidance of the management, which was for 11,500 cars. So this is definitely positive, and this is also possibly why the shares haven't been down as much as, for instance, Tesla's. And I think this is just the management who learned their lessons, that they now know how to under-promise and over-deliver in such terms. But let's also have a closer look at their numbers and also about what's going on in China in the EV market in general. And so for this purpose, I've actually started to fill my Excel sheet with some competitors and monthly sales benchmarks. So you will see it here for the year 2020. The numbers in red are actually numbers where we don't have official numbers yet. Actually, for Tesla, I need to say that Tesla doesn't disclose its number publicly. However, I've got secondary sources for that. But all the other numbers are also from secondary sources or either from the companies directly. So take this chart with a grain of salt here. They may not be 100% accurate, but I think it will serve the purpose here. So what I like to highlight here is that Nio and Tesla both have enormous year-to-date increases. So for Nio, this means ramping from 1,600 cars a month to 4,700 cars a month that got delivered. And this is really a nice ramp up that we see here. It's looking quite organic, to be honest. And in contrast to Tesla, which has a different logistics and way of delivering vehicles. So we always see that the last month in each quarter is the highest one. And what is really exciting here to see is that Tesla has actually ramped in China with a 460% increase from where they have started to where they are probably now in the last month. So this is really incredible news, and this is flying under the radar here. This is not highlighted in the delivery numbers by the Tesla investor relations here, and I think this is maybe missed out by the markets of how fast Tesla is actually scaling with the new Gigafactory in Shanghai here, and they're definitely beating everyone here in the markets, maybe aside from XPeng here, which is also ramping quite well here, however at a much lower scale. At the same time, this maybe is bad news for Nio, right? Because Nio is clearly not scaling as quickly in this year than, for example, XPeng is doing here, but also Tesla is doing. But in my views, we also need to consider here that Nio has been basically bankrupt in Q1 and basically also in Q2. So if we look at the monthly growth rates here also, Nio is now growing at double-digit percentage rates here, and it's just increasing. So even though over the full year, it's not looking as bullish as, for instance, what Tesla is doing if you average the monthly growth rates here. But still, I think Nio is on a way of actually ramping and scaling the production here. Another thing that I like to highlight here is, for instance, how Audi China is doing, because they just had a record-breaking month here with 73,000 cars delivered in China. Of course, these are all gas guzzlers, so there's not EV cars. Their EVs are not doing well in China so far, but still, it gives you a little bit of a feeling of what is currently happening in the Chinese auto market. So they're actually having a quite good year in China as well here, also enjoying similar month-on-month growth rates on average here than Tesla is actually having. So that's quite impressive for legacy OEM here. And of course, for Audi, it's important because China is their most important market there. I think Volkswagen in general makes 60% of their sales in China. So if you look at those growth rates and, for instance, also the quarterly sales benchmarks here, comparing those different competitors here, you can argue that, well, yes, Nio has kind of exceeded on their growth trajectories here for the quarter and for the month, but you also need to recognize here that Nio is not growing as fast as others in the segment on a month-on-month basis. And this clearly shows what also the CEO Li Bin said about Nio, that they are currently supply constrained. And if you order a new car, they have lots of new orders, new demand, then you probably have to wait quite some time until you get your delivery. And this has to do with the fact that Nio, I think, has been in a really bad shape. And of course, their manufacturing partner, JAC, at that point in time, did not invest in, extending the production. And they also had no way of negotiating new capacity there. It didn't make sense at all. So I think this is now the biggest challenge also to watch. What will be the answer of Nio, of how they are going to ramp the production and how fast can they actually increase it. So currently with their partner, JAC, they have annual capacity of 150,000 units that they can produce, and currently they're only using one line. And they also had the challenge that they have to start and ramp the production for the EC6 now. So lots of things are coming together here, and this is possibly why they couldn't ramp as quickly in the previous months. But I'm expecting actually that this will improve. They will have two lines. They will have a proper ramp up of the EC6 coming as well. And I think where they will be aiming at will be around a 12K monthly run rate that they can use with the existing capacity before they actually need a new factory or a second partner. So in my business case, Nio should be aiming for 85,000 deliveries next year, and I think we are close with this run rate to actually making this achievable. I've seen a couple of charts floating around with Nio that they're actually aiming higher for around 90K, but the main point is here that this all looks on track, as well as that I think it's in line with the growth rates that I'm seeing here. I also had a look at the market shares here. So the overall market has been growing from 43,600 electric vehicles to, I'm guessing, around 100,000 by the end of September. So the EV market seems to be growing by an average of 50% month-on-month growth here. And Nio seems to take a market share just below 5% here, quite stable to be honest. And then Tesla here as the leader with around 17% of market share. I haven't included other EV players yet here. I possibly will be updating this in the future. I'm also having Li Auto here, which in my views is not an electric car company, but anyways, it would translate into roughly 3.5% of market share here, although I think they're rather competing actually with the gasoline cars, as it's just having a range extender here, so it's actually competing in a much larger segment here. And then for BYD, I didn't outline the market share here in the EV segment because they're also selling gasoline cars. I need to separate that in the future, so I can give you those numbers as well. But they will obviously taking a quite significant stake here at the market share in the EV segment in China. On the other hand, if you look at their growth rates, I think they're not particularly exciting here, also in comparison to the new players like Nio and Tesla. So this is also part of the reason why I'm not invested in BYD, on top of the fact that I just don't like their product as much. I've been riding the BYD made taxis, that, for instance, that are driving in Shenzhen, and well, there are good electric cars. However, it just doesn't catch me from an investor standpoint here, and I just don't think that BYD cars are actually globally appealing, as well as the fact that they have anything on the tech side, on the battery side, or also in the in-car experience that I find particularly exciting. So I know lots of people asking me in the comments here for BYD. Recently, their stock is doing quite well as well. However, for me, it's just not an investment that I'm looking at. Who I will be adding in the future, though, will be Weltmeister Motors, videos, which I think will be an interesting player in the mass market segment, and which cars I actually have been test driving as well, and which is much more appealing to me in terms of what they have as a product. So currently they're still in startup stage and recently closed another Series D financing round, and are possibly looking to IPO in the future as well. But for now, there's no way of investing in Weltmeister. So that's it about the deliveries in China. Bottom line is Tesla growing fast as hell, under the radar, the growth rates that are actually realized in China. So I think this is a big surprise and should be good news for investors in Tesla. For Nio, beating on the estimates on deliveries, quite positive there, everything on track. However, in regards to the growth rates, not as impressive as, for instance, Tesla, but in my point of view, still on track on meeting, for instance, my business case projections here. So everything perfect so far. Will be really interesting to hear what the management says about its growth projections as well as ramping production in the earnings calls. So stay tuned for my estimates and a video on that. I've actually some more topics regarding the market here in China coming up, and I'm working on it, but I think that is just too much to cover in just this video. So stay tuned for an update on that. Also, please consider to become a Patreon. For instance, if you want to download my Excel sheet that I'm showing in this video, I will publish it there as a post. For instance, I'm now working on some info about a new investment that I'm recently doing, as well as some more insights about Nio in China and the pricing, as well as Tesla and the recent price reductions there. So thank you guys for watching. Have a great weekend and see you in the next one.